what week is it of this pandemic? I don't even remember. And this is beginning to feel a lot like Groundhog's Day, and I'm even wearing the exact same thing that I was wearing last week when I shot this video. And not on purpose, I'm only now realizing it because these days are so cyclical. So, I hope you're coping well with this extended time apart that we're experiencing. And I miss my friends and family members, and I see it in their eyes every time we do a Zoom call or a FaceTime where they see my kids and they just want to pick them up. Grandma and Grandpa just want to pick them up. And I sincerely hope from the bottom of my heart that you are coping well. And if you're a friend or family member of mine and you're watching this and you need someone to talk to, please, you probably have my number. Just give me a call. But enough of that. Let's dig into the lesson this week. The text for our consideration this week is from the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John, verses 1 through 10. And it reads, "Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers." Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." I should begin by noting how this passage and passages like it have been weaponized over the years. This gate metaphor has been described by preachers as this very narrow slit in the wall meant to keep people on the other side of heaven. In fact, to keep people in the place judgmental people have assumed they belong, in hell. And the gatekeeper's function has been described as more of a bouncer, keeping as many people outside of the God club who don't belong in there, a club whose membership the elect pride themselves at obtaining or having been given, whichever person you talk to. All this to say, I can understand why a preacher would like to focus on the universality of God's love and might want to shy away from a text like this, but it's my hope that I might reframe things for you so that you can better understand what this text is really about. Its real goal is to help us follow God's call towards a life-giving way. But what is this life-giving way that Jesus describes? In John's gospel, the way Jesus shows us is a way anchored in God's love. John 3:16. You might have heard that verse before. It is a way anchored in truth. John chapter 8. The truth will set you free. Radical truth telling. It is a way anchored in grace. In that same chapter, John chapter 8, there's a woman caught in adultery, and Jesus says to the people, "If you are without sin, cast the first stone." You see, they were wanting to throw stones at her. And Jesus pointed out that we are all in need of grace. This way that Jesus points us towards, steers us towards, guides us towards, is a way that leads to the restoration of persons who were otherwise left outside of life-giving community. Think about the diseased persons Jesus interacted with, the tax collectors, the sinners, and others who were thought to be unclean or outside of God's love. And think about their corollary today. So Jesus taught about this way, and he embodied this way. He carried this way in his very person, in every fiber of his being, in the way that he spoke, in the actions that he undertook. So he instructed others on how to love and how to care for one another. And he showed his followers what it looks like to forgive one's enemies and to advocate for the dignity of all persons. And this is the way that Jesus described in contrast with other ways that were being practiced all around them. And I've spoken many times about this before, but just a refresher. The status quo in Jesus' day was not good. Rome ruled the roost, the Roman Empire. Israel was an occupied colony of Rome at this time. And the people were highly taxed into deep poverty. The Roman army kept people in line by violent means, and the people were very oppressed. Rome seemed to hold as its values peace for the Romans, but at the expense of others. Wealth for Rome, but on the backs of others. Some people made off very well if they were able to collude or fit in with this economic system and with this governmental system. If they were able to get along with Rome, they might benefit from the pillaging. But most were left outside of the wealth with no access to the resources that they needed to live well. Also, there came with the Roman system an imperial theology. Caesar was known as the Son of God. The emperor was divine and spoke for the gods and spoke for the heavens. The power of Rome was in fact a gift to Rome by the heavens. And Caesar's image was printed on the currency, an ancient rendition of this idea in God, or Caesar we trust. So to summarize, what you have is the values of an empire built by greed and on the backs of the poor and the surrounding nations. You have an empire that has existed by way of perpetual war and looting and unfair economic practices. You not only have greed and violence, but the greed and violence is sanctioned by this nationalistic religion that gives the practices of Rome a divine sanction. People were required to make sacrifices to the cult of the emperor on a yearly basis. That day's version of paying homage to the national identity and its symbols. Rome's voice was the loudest and the most persistent in that time. Then you have Jesus calling to those who would listen, saying in so many words, there is another way that I embody. There is a way marked by peace and love and justice and grace and truth-telling. You know, those thieves who are trying to arrive at heaven by violence and pillage, who are trying to set themselves up well, they are like thieves trying to climb the fence and enter into a peace and a joy and a love that can only be entered into by following my way, my example, by chasing after that dream for your future that I describe. Jesus speaks into a world of loud voices to those whose ears are specially tuned to hear what he has to say. And those who hear it follow. And the more people who hear it, the more people who follow. And they enter into the joy of the God who called them into existence, who gave them a name and who knows them intimately. In Jesus' time, this meant that the disciples should stop listening to the voice of Rome and its false gods of greed and oppression and start listening to the voice that called them towards life-giving ways. This, of course, upset powerful people in those days, and it upset them so much that, spoiler alert, probably not, you know this, they killed Jesus. And many others have died through the centuries along the way. We call them martyrs. But those who hear the call of the shepherd continue to follow. And this is true today. There are many voices today trying to command our attention. In our consumer culture, we are told that our identity is tied up in our vocations, our ability to accrue wealth, in our titles, in our national identity. We are told this is where we find our meaning and our substance. It's like we're asked to wear so many name tags, mass-produced, meant to give us a sense of identity. And we are told that if we play the game, we will find our way inside the fence. Inside the fence, we are told we will be safe, secure, fed, cared for. The safety made possible by military force. The wealth made possible by rampant consumption and a willing, albeit underpaid, workforce. And if you just pluck away at things long enough, you will be safe inside the fence, we are told. In the meantime, look around you. Have these promises borne out? Has listening to those voices paid off in the ways that they promised you? Have they been found to be true? Mass incarceration, deeper pockets of poverty, a more vulnerable, quote-unquote, middle class, ever shrinking. All this before the pandemic and the fragility of the system being laid bare by the pandemic. I think we are seeing what it is like in real time. And we are seeing that there are no shortcuts to the place Jesus wants to lead us. No one can jump the fence. No thieves or burglars or anyone trying to get there in a dishonest, immoral way. You cannot, by way of robbery or thievery, enter into the peace of God. You must enter by the way Jesus described, which I'll remind you is a way of love, grace, peace, one that strives to restore all persons or include all persons in life-giving communion with one another. And this way is only made possible by way of love and hard truth-telling, which is what I'm trying to do right now. Whose voice will you hear in these trying times? There are any number of voices you can listen to. Just turn on the television. The voices that have led us, and again, have led us, in my opinion, to tenuous and stressful living. The greedy voices that brought you mass layoffs the whole while turned your heart into a consumer's heart. Is that the voice you will listen to? The voices that sanction torture and black sites all over the globe in our name and allegedly for your safety? Is that who you will listen to? The ones that brought you drone strikes on civilians, all in the name of peace? Have their promises been found to be true? Decade and decades later, have their promises been found to be true? I think they are. In Jesus' words, like the thieves who seek to kill and destroy. There are no shortcuts to the peace of God. Listen. Hear the voice, competing with the loud, blithering voices of our times. Jesus calling you home. His way led to a cross, but in so doing, he confronted the death-dealing ways of our world and revealed that life wins in the end, again and again. And if you believe this to be true, listen to his voice, calling us towards a love that transcends borders, nationalities, races, language. A voice that calls us away from greed and toward abundance on the other side of generosity. There is a gate, a path, and a door to these things, and Jesus is the embodiment of these things. Will you hear his voice and tune out the loud mouths on your television or in the print media or in certain high political offices? Hear the one who said, whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. It's time for persons of all walks of life to hear this call and follow it to the life it affords. God is faithful and will make good on these promises, I believe.